Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Administrator, welcome. First of all, let me say how fortunate we are to have you in this essential position, given your background and your passion and your previous leadership in this space of international development and economic regeneration and leadership in human rights areas as well. So thank you for your service. Throughout your written testimony, you talked about the word transformation with a big T. You also talked about developing the metrics that are going to be applied across programs. And I think this begs a big question, and I want to touch on that for a moment and ask you a specific about northern Iraq and the process you've undertaken to assure the possibility that those affected by genocide may be able to return to their homes. In regards to development, I think I'm glad to hear you're rethinking some fundamentals here, because I think we have to ask ourselves, what does that actually mean? If it means that we're going to try to bring some order and harmony and prosperity where there is death and misery and poverty, beautiful, perfect. I think that's the fundamentals of this mission. If it means that we're going to have good intentions plus more money, that may just result in fragmentation or the imposition of unsustainable initiatives. And I think we may be somewhere in between. So whatever you can do, well, in regards to the specifics of the metrics of how you're going to measure the outcomes toward the fundamental goals, which I just outlined, which I think are consistent with your mission, I'd like to understand that process more deeply. And when will you have those, and what is currently in the works? And then secondly, the issue, if you could give us an update on those who have been so heinously affected by ISIS's attempt to wipe them out, particularly in northern Iraq, the Yazidis, the Christians, and others who have throughout time claimed that as their ancestral home as well, and have provided a pluralism that's absolutely necessary for the long-term stability of greater Iraq as well.
Thank you for those questions. First, in the area of metrics, again, since I looked to join USAID, I talked about my philosophy on the journey to self-reliance. And I've lived in Africa twice in my life, and I've always been struck by the innate desire of everyone I met to shape their own future. Over and over again, people want the chance to shape their own future. Everything that we're doing is designed towards helping people do just that, is giving leaders the tools they need, the information they need, yes, some of the resources they need to be able to do that. Some months back, as we began to look at the opportunity to reposture the agency around that vision, I turned to my experienced staff. I turned to people in the field, career professionals here at DC, as well as some of the outside observers that have been working in this field for a long time. And I asked them to help me determine, help me identify those metrics that can help measure a country's capacity and their commitment in the major sectors where we're working. I think commitment is as important, if not more important, than capacity, because if a country is not willing to put its own skin in the game, if it's not willing to make some of the tough choices, all the money in the world is not going to get there in terms of their rise. And so we do ask them, we say, look, we don't have all the answers, but based upon our experience, these are things that you need to do.
And commitment flows out of leadership, virtuously oriented leadership.
Absolutely. So, civil society as well as governing leadership. With respect to minorities in northern Iraq, I have to give you a great deal of the credit. As I was going through my confirmation process and we sat down and we met, you were one of the most passionate voices for helping Christians, Yazidis, and other religious and ethnic minorities who want to return to northern Iraq, helping them along the way, making sure that they had some of the assistance necessary to return to some semblance of normalcy. So we were able to mobilize modest resources almost immediately. Secondly, the money that had been previously pledged towards UNDP, we worked out an MOU with the United Nations Development Program to ensure that 55 million of the first 75 million tranche of a larger 150 million would be aimed at that area to do some restoration of essential services. And on top of that, again, I think inspired by what you brought forward, we've launched something called a broad agency announcement, which is a process we already had on the books, just weren't using all that often, and it basically said, everyone who cares about this issue and area and has some experience, what are your ideas? We don't have all the answers sitting back here, either at the agency or in DC. What are your ideas? And it's a relatively low bar for participation. I think it's a 2-page statement of interest, gets the process going. And the input and interest we got was, quite frankly, overwhelming. So we're moving to a point in the process where we hope to be able to announce what the outcome will be and how that programming will go. But we think it offers real hope for making sure that we're able to tailor some assistance that protects that diversity.
Wonderful. Do you have a time, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, a timeline on that?
Well, I had forgotten, I'm actually going to Iraq soon myself
Okay.
in a matter of weeks, and at that point, we're hoping to be able to make an announcement. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fortenberry.